Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. This is episode number 149. As always, I'm one of your hosts. I'm coming to you live from Berlin, Germany. My name is Alexander Holland. And as always, again, as well, I'm sat digitally next to my number one pod partner way down there in Melbourne, Australia. He's got to be the one called
John Maloney.
John Maloney. What do you think of the band name of U2?
Good question.
Solid quest. Solid quest. What's your feeling towards U2?
TSTCH. Look, I have great fondness for some of their early work.
Oh, yeah?
And I used to listen to them when I was younger and really like those, Where the Streets Have No Name, all those sorts of things.
Joshua Tree, great album.
Joshua Tree.
What an album.
And
got it on vinyl.
Then
over there in my little record shelf.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, that's great. Great stuff. The Edge, Bono.
Yes.
Then they
Larry
went a little
Mullen
bit
Jr.,
kind of...
Adam Clayton, I think is his bass player's name.
There you go. Then they went a little bit kind of Coldplay-ish and sort of went, let's just keep doing reverby guitars and not really think as much about our lyrics. And Bono seems like kind of a bit of a show pony, but that's fine. I mean, he's allowed to be. He's a rock star. So look, someone said, I got free tickets to U2. I'd say, yeah, I'll have them.
Do you know, you love the song Beautiful Day? It's sort of in between. It's gone from that late 90s. So they've got Joshua Tree's 80s, then Zeropa and
Zeropa.
I think it was an album called Pop something, and then I think 2000 is the album that has Beautiful Day on it. Do you know song Beautiful Day?
Yeah, I do.
Can you? Don't look up the lyrics because that's the bit.
Yeah, okay. I won't look up the lyrics.
Because the fun thing...
I remember some of them.
Do you know? Because it goes, it's a beautiful day to let him get away. Beautiful day.
Me,
there you go.
Take me to that other place.
Yes.
Teach me. You don't know you can.
That's right. So this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun thing for you to raise at a dinner party. For this weekend, you can say to people, if the conversation drops, just say, "Hey, do you guys know Beautiful Day by U2?" And everyone's going to go, "Yeah, of course we do. We love that song." And they're going to be like, "Of course we know it." And then you're going to go, "Do you know that song contains the word tuna, as in tuna fish?"
Yeah, and then crickets at the dinner party. Since just face palming.
Not the Beautiful Day tuna bit again. Because I think
exactly.
I've said this to people before. It's the only thing I say to people. Because everybody always, it doesn't seem like a song that should have tuna fish in it.
No, it does not.
Do you know where that comes in? First of all, do you believe me?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Or am I lying?
I mean, it's an inconceivable thing to make up. It's a beautiful day to eat some tuna fish. I can't imagine where it comes into the lyrics. No,
that's the thing. This is why it's so good.
There's a reference to oil fields.
Yes,
I'm getting
here you go.
My memory of the lyrics.
You're getting close. See, this is the thing. It's in the bridge.
Maybe the fields of fish oil.
It's about taking fish oil as you age. No, this is the thing, and this is why it's such a good thing, is because people feel like, I know the song, and then you say, you know Beautiful Day, how he's talking about not letting it get away. Did you know that has the word tuna in it? And people go, no, what the fuck are you talking about? No, it doesn't. So in the bridge, it goes, and you close, in the bridge, it goes, see the world in green and blue, see China right in front of you, see the canyons broken by cloud, see the tuna fleets clearing the seas out.
Oh, wow.
So the word tuna in the bridge context, it makes sense. But it's so fun to say to people because you're like, what are they talking about? They don't eat cans of tuna. in Beautiful
Yeah.
Day. They're not having John West salmon. What are you talking about? And you're going to make so many friends at the dinner party talking about.
That's great.
Because people will be like, I don't believe you. And then you'll show them. You can even say to them, don't believe me? Sing the bridge. And they probably will go, oh, yeah, I think I know the bridge. It goes, no, I'm not a hopeless case. And then they'll go, I guess, what does it go? It goes, see the world in green and blue. And then they'll go, oh, see the tuna fleets clearing the sea out.
See the tuna. I probably just sang absentmindedly, see the tuna fish.
Yeah, I mean,
clearing the sea
I think
out.
I did as well, actually. Yeah, see the tuna fish.
Clearing the sea of whatever they eat.
Or you see the tuna fish in the bottom of your salad bowl. See the tuna fish at the bottom of your salad bowl.
Is he annoyed at overfishing?
No, he's talking about
implication.
the beauty of the world. You two's, but no.
Clearing the sea out.
And so he says,
so he wants the seas cleared. He's saying I love watching the fleets get rid of those disgusting tuna.
He says, he lays the boot into the Japanese where he said, like overfishing. I don't even know if the Japanese, do the Japanese overfish tuna? They certainly do some pretty questionable things to whales.
Things. Yeah. I don't know. I think Australia probably overfishes tuna.
Yeah.
But
I think I have relatives that are very involved in that industry.
Oh yeah, the old South Australian tuna. The tuna coin.
My dad's been on several tuna trawlers, I think they're called.
It's quite a thing, isn't it? That people might be interested in. That you go to one of the most isolated parts of the world, and there's just mansions there because people have tuna fortunes.
It's true. Port Lincoln tuna fortunes.
Yeah.
And a lot of and also quite strangely as well, a lot of people from the former Yugoslavia emigrated to Port Lincoln and brought fishing know-how with them. So there's all these like Croatians in Port Lincoln with huge McMansions. It's quite an odd. It's quite an odd. That
reminds me of Cooper Pedy.
Yeah, that's right. Does Cooper Pedy have for anybody who doesn't know? Maybe just give them a little bit of. Cooper Pedy's a pretty weird fucking place.
It's a very strange place. I recommend if you're in South Australia having a look at it because it's such a kind of otherworldly, peculiar place because basically there's opals there and people at some point discovered opals in the ground which are pretty much just pressurized glass that then gets opalescent, gets these beautiful colors in it. And then they started mining it because you can make it beautiful jewelry out of it and other things. And then for some reason, all of these people from the former Yugoslavia came down and settled in Cooper Pedy and began trying to seek their fortune with opals. This is quite relatively recently, I guess.
And Cooper Pedy, for anybody who who's not Australian, is in South Australia. It's basically like so hot. It's like living on Mars. And
And it's so, there's just nothing around it.
It's desolate.
You drive in, I remember driving in a couple of years ago, I went there for the first time, and you see these little mounds everywhere, thousands and thousands and thousands of little mounds because it's quite cheap to just, you spend a few $1,000, you get a plot, you dig down and see if you can find opals. So people have just been trying their luck for years, and they live famously in underground houses there. So they have like pubs and houses. It's a kind of it's like an alternate universe Hobbiton, except that part of what makes it interesting is that the people from the former Yugoslavia, some of them brought their kind of internecine rivalries from that part of the world to Cooper Pedy, which always just seems so strange to me because it's this version of nationalism which is completely out of context. Like you're in the middle of the desert
in Australia.
And there's like a Serbian Orthodox church underground, and then they started fighting over opal plots, I guess. And one of maybe the Croatian club got blown up, and there was all these kind of stories of crazy opal miners going apeshit in the middle of nowhere, and it became this all sounded very kind of Mad Maxy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I recommend. I mean, it's settled down now because nobody made that much money out of it, and people that didn't stay in Cooper Pedy. So it's pretty chill these days. But go down and have a look.
Before we go
Show
on
sponsors Cooper Pedy Area Council.
I didn't know opalescent was a word.
Yeah, it's a nice word, isn't it? And Cooper Pedy, which I love, it's a phrase in the local Aboriginal language, which means something like "white man in a hole," because the Aboriginal people had no use for it, so they just got there and were like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?"
Before we go on to the next bit, just rehearse for me how you're going to bring up the U2 tune a bit to a friend, to a new acquaintance at a dinner party this weekend.
Sure.
So you're standing around with a bunch of men. You've each got craft beers in your hand.
Yeah.
Somebody
Let's say there's like there's a hum of conversation at the table, and then I go, "Everyone, excuse me," do the speech giving tap on my glass.
So it's not just your circle of men standing around.
No, I want everyone.
Ding, 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 ding.
On board.
And then
Ding,
you'll
ding, ding, ding,
hop
ding.
up on your soapbox.
Yeah,
And
and
then you
say,
say-
first of all, Janet and Rob, thanks so much for having us here this evening. It's been lovely. The Ozo Buko was to die for. Now, has anyone heard the song
Beautiful Day by U2.
Beautiful Day
And everyone's
by
going to
U2?
go,
You too.
yeah, I fucking love U2. I love Bono. So good.
Yeah. And I'll go, fuck, you guys are pretty mid. Anyway, what I want you to ask yourselves is there a reference to tuna in that song? Or is that giving it away too much? Maybe
No,
I'll say,
that's what you say.
Yeah.
You say,
yeah.
you say, or you can just say, I just want everybody to realize that song contains the word tuna, as in tuna fish, even though you all think that it doesn't. And everyone's, and then
just sit down again. Stony faced.
and then, or just mic drop and leave the party.
Quietly getting my things. And they're all just like, does it?
And then
Where are you going?
what you could do, John, is you could just say it, and then you could mic drop and start slowly walking out of the party, and everyone's scratching their head, going, "What the fuck's he talking about?" And then you just turn your head around before you walk out the gate, and you go, "It's in the bridge, guys," and just keep on walking. And then say,
been there.
guys, it's in the bridge. So it's always been there. Canyon's broken by clouds. Comes after that, and then just leave the party, and everyone's gonna go, "Oh my god, what?" And
Giving
then
them
say,
a story they'll tell for the rest of their lives.
and then say, what else have we overlooked? Eh? What else have we missed? What else has been
Makes you
right in
think,
front of
doesn't
us
it?
the whole time? Eh?
And that's just beautiful day.
I'm looking at you, Craig. With, and we all love to have a drink. Sometimes it gets the better of us, doesn't it? So let's maybe think about that as well.
Yeah.
So you guys,
Not you, Janet. You're lovely.
Now, John, that was my very odd intro to the show.
I love that. I love that you focused on that during the week. Speaking of music, it's perhaps...
Yeah, go on.
No, you finish.
I was just going to say, I think about that all the time. I love, and I've said it to people for years. I often at dinner parties, I just go, "Hey, do you guys know that Beautiful Day by U2 has the word tuna as in tuna fish?" And people go, "No, it doesn't. I know that song really well." And then you prove it to them. And people's lives change in front of your eyes. And I love that. But yeah, you were saying, speaking of music.
Speaking of music, I saw recently a concert by pianist and composer Ludovico Einaudi. Some of our listeners, particularly the Italian listeners, might know who that is. He's done a lot of music for film and TV and commercials. So he did, I think it's as far back as 2006. He did This Is England. He scored that.
Yeah.
He did I'm Not There. He did Black Swan trailer. He did the music for Ricky Gervais's Derek, Nomadland. So he's done heaps of stuff. And I got tickets to go and see him as a one of Jacinta's presents for Christmas, I think it was. And it was lovely. It was out in the Sydney Myer Music Bowl, which is an outdoor, sort of an outdoor amphitheatre, I guess. And it was under the stars, and he was playing this beautiful, very film scorey type piano. And towards the end of the show, he paused. He'd paused a few times just to engage in chit chat with the audience. And he said something like in his Italian accent about how glad they were to be here and how much they loved us coming out. And someone said something affectionate back to him in Italian. So that was a very sweet moment. But about half a second after they'd said that, so he smiled. I don't know what they said, probably I love you and you're wonderful. And about half a second later, someone just yelled from the other side of the audience, "Turn your bloody phones off." Because everyone had been holding their phones up. And he was just about to do, the last few songs. And they were they really belted it out. "Turn your phones off." And then everyone was kind of awkwardly chuckling, and Ludovico had this bemused look on his face and then just continued. And I thought, maybe that person is a Don't Praise the Machine listener, because we've complained about overuse of phones.
The cursed rectangle.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, people did put their phones away because they just were kind of shamed into it. And I thought, that man's a local hero and he should be celebrated. And it made me think, because, we've all thought that at concerts where you think, why don't you just listen to this instead of proving to all your friends that you're at this concert, putting it on stories or whatever.
Yeah.
Just be present. And he was a hero of being present, putting the cursed rectangle in your pocket and listening to Ludovico's piano. So I salute that man. But also, speaking of beautiful days, I wanted to tell you about my very special day yesterday.
Yeah.
I've mentioned in passing, I think, one of the activities that I partook in yesterday. I think what's happened is that I've been spending a lot of time on the podcast with you. We've been tracking how the reels have been going. I sent out a newsletter.
Yeah.
Or we sent out a newsletter to our listeners this week. If you haven't signed up to for the newsletter, you can do so at dptm.org. But that was a very enjoyable activity, putting that together and, watching your reels really take flight. And I think it's beginning to change me in ways that I don't quite recognize in myself. And I realized this yesterday, that I was becoming a kind of Silicon Valley weirdo because I started off the day, went to All Press Espresso in Collingwood. Some of our listeners, I think All Press has a pretty good presence in the UK.
Yeah.
Started my day there. Normal enough, but I didn't eat anything because I was having a low-calorie fasting day. So that's already a little bit kind of Silicon Valley culture.
Yeah.
I caught up with a friend of mine. Then I went to my co-working space in Collingwood, which is in a converted boot factory. And then when I was finished working for the day, I took the tram to Northcote, which is in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, and I went to a place called Gravity Flotation, which is a place that offers a variety of services, but one of the main things they do is allow you to use flotation tanks, sometimes called sensory deprivation tanks. And I thought, I'm going to have an hour-long tank float. And so I went in, took my kit off, and then climbed into this thing which kind of looks like a science fiction giant potty, basically. It looks like a giant potty with fluorescent lights in it. Then you close the lid and you turn the light off and you just lie there for an hour, and the water that you're bathing in suspends you because it's very salty and you can't see anything. You can't really feel the water because it's room temperature, and you have lots of weird, you drift into a kind of half-awake stupor and have lots of weird loopy daydreams. And I thought, for me, this is going to really unlock some good bits for the podcast and good ideas for the podcast. And then I was I was meeting up with the guy I had coffee with that morning also was talking to me about his weeks because he's Jewish and he celebrates the Sabbath, so he kind of has a non-screen day on Saturdays, and I thought that'd be great if I was to have a secular equivalent of that where I just turned all the lights off on Friday night and, you know, had a candlelit dinner, got up the next day, didn't look at screens at all day until Saturday night. And then I thought, imagine if I was just doing that on Saturday and then having my fasting and flotation days on Thursdays and Mondays, and imagine the kind of Steve Jobs-esque guru I'd turn into.
I'm surprised. What possessed you to do the flotation tank?
Well, I've done it a few times before, but I hadn't done it for many years, probably at least 6 or 7 years. But I remember really enjoying it. And last year I bought a few friends passes to go and do it. And one of them...
Instead of go-karting.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of laser tag or go-karting.
It's a kind of insulting gift, isn't it? Because it's like, I just want you to do... I want you to feel obliged to go to this place and do literally nothing for an hour in it, just float in salt water. And one of them hasn't been able to use it, so I thought, well, in the meantime, I can always buy them another one later, but in the meantime, I might just use that pass. And also because I was fasting, you know, and it just prevents you from doing anything fun at the end of the day because you can't punctuate it with a meal or going out and seeing people. And there's only so many episodes of X-Files I can watch on SBS. So I thought this will fill in some time. I'll just float around for an hour. And I got to tell you, it is really nice. Like, there's something that happens to your brain which makes you feel I don't know if it's also the salt. It makes you feel extremely refreshed afterwards.
Oh wow. I wouldn't have expected that. I would have thought I would have thought that the value in it is the experience that you have during, and that you go into some... What's your brain doing?
Yeah, I mean, because you can't see anything and because you can't really feel... I mean, you can feel the water, but it's, you know, it's just body temperature, and you don't have to, you know, paddle around because it's salty enough that it just suspends you gently. So you're not really getting any inputs, which has a surprisingly quick effect on at least my brain, because I think I can't really tell where my body is in space. You feel very much like you're just floating in darkness. And often what'll happen is I haven't done it in a while, but I remember this happening the last couple of times I used it as well. I'll go to sleep for the first, you know, maybe 15 minutes, and then you wake up. But when you wake up, it's not as though you really are doing anything. You're just staring into the blackness. So then you're in this sort of half awake state where you feel like you're awake, but your brain is almost acting as though you're dreaming. And it's interesting. And then I often feel, even this morning and certainly for hours afterwards, I just felt extremely refreshed and kind of energized and clear in my head. And I got into an Uber and I realized that I'd forgotten to have a shower afterwards, which you're meant to do because you're just covered in fine salt particles, which as you dry off just make you... I mean, the guy must have just thought I had psoriasis and dandruff or something. I was just leaving this chalky outline of my body in his Uber. So I'm sorry if you're listening. But I recommend it. Flotation, gravity flotation, show sponsors, get yourself up to High Street, Northcote and have a float. Apparently the guy that started it, that particular one, is a real float head, and he does flotations that sometimes go for as long as, I don't know, 9 or 10 hours. I don't know how you do it. I think I'd completely detach from reality if I was in there for that long, and I'd never quite be the same person again.
You just live in, have your consciousness live in float.
Yeah, that's right. And all my skin just sloughs off gradually into the tank.
John, are you ready to hear about something that I want to say on you?
I can't wait.
You know how people often talk about things that we do, people often talk about things that we do as a society currently that we will look back on in years to come, and we will think, I can't believe that we did that. Often they think, I can't believe that humans were so cruel, or I can't believe that humans were so stupid. Because the way this tends to go is you look at things that we used to do, it's funny, the pace of society, particularly in the West, the way that attitudes change is actually quite rapid. I mean, you can look at 10 years ago and accepted attitudes are quite different. And you go back 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you go back 50 years and it's pretty different to how it was now. And there are definitely behaviors and attitudes that were going on 50 years ago that you just go, I cannot believe that people used to do that. It's it was pretty commonplace back in the day that certain uses of violence and prejudice against certain groups of people were just totally commonplace. And I know John is thinking, guilty. He heard violence and prejudice, and John thought, guys, guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
I'm a bit of a dinosaur in that respect. No, I read an article recently which was about caning at schools, and I thought, I cannot believe.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was caned. Your
recently,
dad?
That was a thing. Yeah, he would have been caned. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one of these really leapt out at me this week when I was sitting at the train station and something came out that we're doing at the moment. It's very odd. And it doesn't come up that often, but it just popped into my consciousness. And I thought, what are we doing here? So I was listening to a podcast and somebody used the analogy of a greyhound chasing a mechanical rabbit and then moved on. And they no doubt the analogy had to do with performing some sort of pointless and exhausting task and not understanding the futility of said task. And that was the first thing that hit me. And then the second thing that hit me was, tricking dogs into chasing mechanical rabbits for the purposes of gambling and public spectacle is pretty fucking odd. And then I just thought, this is not, like, how is this happening now? That it's one of those things that you just accept. But I felt like if you take a future person in 20 years and you take them to the greyhound track and you go, we used to trick these dogs into thinking that a rabbit was real, that little furry rabbit, and it would spin around the track mechanically, and then people would gamble on it, and they'd go, what the fuck were you doing? That's mental. And
totally.
And it just, I had a little bit of a look at the history. I actually got this from a British website, which I think is itself a greyhound track, which is called Oxford Stadium. So greyhound racing has its roots in some ancient sport, which is called coursing. And greyhounds would chase and hunt live prey, and it dates back to the Greek and Roman empires. And then in 1912, an American inventor named Owen Patrick Smith invented the first mechanical lure to replace live animals, making the sport more humane. And
that was a progressive step, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time.
So it usually it now involves a fluffy or cloth item attached to an arm, which is mounted on a motorized vehicle or rail that travels around the track. And the goal is to mimic the movement of live prey to entice the greyhound's innate desire to chase. The speed and motion of the mechanical hare, because it's often a rabbit, are deliberately designed to maintain a tantalizing, uncatchable distance ahead of the fastest greyhound. And I loved this. And then I just started thinking, what if I'm in a conversation with someone at a dinner party and they mention, or I'm out at a pub, get chatting to some guy. He says, I'm just in from out of town. I don't live here. I say, what are you doing here? And he says, I'm actually on a business trip for a conference because my company manufactures mechanical rabbit systems for greyhound racing. And I'm just like, what? Because obviously that's like a company that makes these fucking things. And then I found one. It's called safechase.com.au. And they make them. That makes them. That's the job. Yeah. They make the mechanical rabbit that greyhounds have to chase. And
imagine the meetings at that company.
But it also did get me thinking about the general question, which is, of course, what might we be doing wrong now that future generations will look back at in disgust. So that's the first thing that I put into Google. I put into Google, what might we be doing wrong? What might we be doing wrong right now that the future generations will look back at in disgust? And Quora was the first one that came up. So these are a bunch of answers that people gave from Quora.
Interesting.
Things that we're doing at the moment that in years to come, humans, particularly our children, our grandchildren, will look back and go, oh my God, you used to do that.
What's wrong with you people?
Crazy. First one that came up on Quora, letting people drive.
That's interesting. Yeah, okay. You'd say to people, when we got automated cars, people will go, you just entrusted the human brain to drive at 120 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, and then they'd say, surely people had accidents, and you'd go, I guess that happened occasionally, and they'd go, what do you mean occasionally? How occasionally? And you'd go, well, in the year 2023 in Australia, which has a population of 22 million people, in the year 2023, there were 12,666 deaths on Australian roads, and that's not counting all of the injuries. Wild. We just let 12,666 Australians die in a single year from road accident fatalities, and people will go,
wild.
Wait, what the fuck? And you'd go, but I mean, we got to places so fast. It was so good.
It's like when you hear about Victorian England and they go, that says, people just used to die. I mean, this still happens obviously in parts of the world now, and quite a lot. But, when you think about these places where people just used to die because the smog was so terrible that it just used to kill people if there was a bad fog, and you think, why didn't you stop that? And they would have just been like, well, it makes cool stuff.
I mean, it is incredible. It is incredible to think the value, the bargain is the value that driving offers the world. We've decided as a people is worth the amount of carnage that it creates.
Sure.
But when you stop and think about the amount of carnage, it's massive. It's fucking crazy. Number two, which people think will be pretty weird, which again, I can relate to this one quite a lot because this was me and this was you, and it does seem super odd now, even though it's still going on. Indoctrinating children to believe in some religion. That's pretty weird. Like when you see a spooky old man telling young children whose critical brains have not developed, basically like explaining to them that there's a sort of conscious man type figure in the sky that controls everything and watches them all the time and has a weird set of puritanical values that it insists everybody lives by or be sent to eternal damnation in a fiery pit in the ground.
I remember being very young and learning about the differences between purgatory and hell, going, if you do something quite bad, you'll burn for 1,000 years. But if it's real bad, which can include things like lying or stealing, not that bad, but, you'll just burn for eternity. And my little brain was just falling out of my ears in church going, eternity. So even when it's like 1 billion years, that's not even a thing because it could be another 100 billion years and I still haven't, I'm not going to finish.
Yeah.
Ever.
What is the...
And then I thought, but I still sinned. That's how much I enjoyed sinning.
You knew what the eternal consequence was going to be.
Yeah.
And you're like...
And I was like, reckon I'll just grab this pack of Maltesers before I leave the milk bar. Fuck it.
Not pay for it. What's the deal with, how bad are the conditions in purgatory? I can remember spooky lost ghost figures going, oh, I'm between two worlds. It's not very comfortable.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. There's probably some, I don't know what the current best practice is in terms of understanding what happens in purgatory, whether it's just hell but it's time limited, or is it also less shit than hell?
Yeah.
And then there's limbo, which
is that another one? Is there a difference between purgatory and limbo?
I think limbo's been, it's kind of off.
Closed.
It's a bit off market now.
Limbo is closed.
Limbo's closed for renovations. But certainly people in our parents, grandparents' generations would have still believed in limbo. And that's why you have anxiety around getting your baby baptized ASAP, because if that baby dies and it's not baptized, it goes to limbo, which I think is just not bad but not good. It's kind of like that weird realm in the Matrix where you're just walking around in a white space and having chats, and you're like, this would have been better if I'd had water on my head and been accepted into heaven, but it's fine, I guess. Just an infant crawling around an empty space for eternity.
Number 3 is probably the one that most people cite when asked this question, which is eating sentient creatures and our treatment of them prior to us eat the kind of lives they live so that we may feast on their body. And products as well. So like, you know, the dairy industry's probably not a great life neither. But yeah, bacon, beef. Ooh, my mouth's starting to water.
What about stuff like foie gras? I love that, because you go, so are you content to just that there's birds just being force fed, so that in your French bistro you can go, yeah, that's pretty bad, but so delicious.
You imagine saying bread. That to when your grandson Plonk is asking you, when Plonk says, Papa, what was your favorite food? And you'd say, I fucking love a bit of foie gras. And Plonk will say, how was that made? And you'd say, well, what you do is you take a goose, and Plonk's going, I like the sound of this already. I love geese. They're so beautiful and pretty. And you go, then you turn it upside down and you tie it all up, and Plonk's going, okay, I don't like where this is going, but continue.
Okay. No,
and
it's
then
not okay at all.
Stick a funnel into the goose's mouth upside down, and Plonk's going, what kind of grandfather is this? And then you force feed that goose, so it gets real fat liver. So fat, way fatter than it would ever be, because it would never consume that much food to get a liver that fat. But that fatty liver is what's going to make that foie gras that Plonk, your grandfather, loved so dear when he'd go on Parisian holidays.
And I also just love marbled beef, which is made from beef that are not allowed to exercise properly. And and I love just going into restaurants where I'd go, I'll have that lobster, which is probably twice my age, and it's just been sitting there having a vivid inner life, but in a very small tank since time immemorial. And then I'll have it plucked out and cooked this very night. Because alive. I love fresh lobster. Yeah, cooked alive. And Plonk is just white as a sheet. And I say, fucking you softies. Can't take it anymore. How do you know that your fucking kale isn't conscious?
Number 4, prioritizing profit and over the quality of life, I guess. Prioritizing profit and individual quality of life over... Prioritizing profit and individual quality... I should have read this before. Prioritizing profit and individual quality of life over general quality of life. I'm not really sure if that's the best way of expressing that. I guess somebody's saying that we might look back... I've heard other people saying this as well, is that we may look back on a human's value being very much connected to their job, essentially, as being a bit weird. That if you go, we were humans, and what was the first thing that you did when you met a person? You asked them what they do, because that's how you assess their value.
Yeah, which is a fairly recent thing. I mean, it used to be a point of pride for people that they did not work at least in a kind of 8-hour a day job, because they didn't have to. They grew tomatoes and they wrote books, and they went to balls. So I think the sooner we have the robots doing our bidding, the better, because we can all get back to that kind of lifestyle. But it is funny, isn't it, when you think, I mean, I often think when I drive through country Victoria, there is a, you know, that as you get further and further from the big city, the towns kind of can get smaller and smaller and smaller until they're sort of a couple of hundred people. And if you're in a town of a couple of hundred people and someone doesn't have a home, you can't really just let them wander around homeless or like desperately mentally ill. But then if you add 1,000 more houses, people are just like, oh, that's not my problem anymore, is it?
That's true. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
That, you wouldn't have a country town where there's just a totally crazy person just walking in front of traffic, and
you're just parting the curtains and going, oh, Bill, it's Bill. We can't just leave him.
Yeah.
But then in Melbourne, I just walk down Sydney Road and there's someone who's not well at all, and people are just like, it's just another Saturday on Sydney Road, isn't it? Who cares? And that's why I say, don't think twice.
What's the one? Is there a line? Is there another Day in Paradise line about somebody being? There's certainly one about somebody being homeless. I don't think there's a line. Yeah. He was out to the man. There's somebody being homeless. Sir, can you help me? It's cold and I've nowhere to sleep.
There's something in the bridge about foie gras, I'm pretty sure.
This gives me a good opportunity to do this. Tell me if this works, John, because this is a new feature that I'm adding to the podcast.
Love that.
Oh, think twice, 'cause it's another day for you and me in paradise. Oh,
wow.
Think twice, 'cause it's another day for you and me in paradise. How was that? That worked?
Beautiful. Yeah, I felt like it was 3 a.m. and we ended our evening in a karaoke bar.
That's my new reverb unit that I've added, because I'm always upscaling the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm always upscaling.
That's what we need.
I'm always upscaling the podcast. Also,
We do need to get more soundboardy, I think.
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking forward to.
Obnoxious and annoying soundboarding. I'm going to do one more for you, and this is actually a shout out to my brother, because this is based on a famous meme that I love, which I'm just going to go triple double check, 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 check, double check.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember that. Is it like a prank call? What's the context?
It's a prank call of a guy. I should put the link in the show notes and tell people. Just YouTube prank call Dougal, like Dougal music store, or just Google prank call triple double check. It's a guy who rings a music store. This is almost probably 15, maybe even 20 years ago. This prank call, a guy calls a music store and he has a particular voice effector in front of him that he's running his voice through as he makes the call, and he just keeps asking them for a particular song. He's asking them if they have it, but he can't remember the name of the song, and he just keeps saying, it's that song, it goes triple double check, triple double check, and he runs it through delay and reverb, and the people on the other line are just going, what is this? I don't know that song. And he goes, yeah, you do. It's really popular. It goes triple double check, double check. And it's very funny. So just look up Dougal double check or prank call double check. And John, this is number 5 as well from Cora. This one spoke to me. Have you ever spoken?
Wow, there's more.
Yeah. This one, I'll make this the last one. This one was our education system, which I thought is interesting. We haven't really spoken about the education system much on the podcast. Somebody had written, we stuff our kids into rooms for a quarter of their lives and have them listen to ill-equipped teachers impart information that is quickly forgotten, largely irrelevant, and is readily available in more digestible and engaging form, taught by experts or on demand on the internet. This is a huge travesty, especially for all the little Einsteins and Mozarts whose creativity are currently squashing out in our schools. And I do think school is one of those other ones. The traditional school structure, which again, you just accept. You just go, this is obviously how you learn. And then I've been teaching myself a lot of other things in my adult life, and I'm going, I don't think that is really how you learn.
No, it's funny. A friend of mine said recently, do you think I should go back and do a master's? And I said, the only reason you'd do that probably is if you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Or if you were trying to network, or if you thought it was really good to pimp up your CV with that particular qualification. Because if you're just wanting the actual content, then I would just probably read some stuff and subscribe to some people's Substacks and, go to a few private courses that you're going to pay $200 for instead of $45,000 for a master's.
Yeah.
And you'll learn just about as much. And I mean, I spent 9 years at university, so I didn't really take that advice. But back then it was a different world and you had to kind of go through those channels. But yeah, I think the time is coming fast that we'll think differently about that. But, if it wasn't for school, I don't know, where are people going to learn about playing handball or keeping their shirt tucked in?
Having their socks pulled up.
Yeah.
Where are they, how many religion lessons did we have a week? Again, that's another thing that you accept when you're in school. And I look back at that my parents were paying a lot of money for me to go into a room, probably several times a week and have them talk about a bunch of spooky supernatural nonsense.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird.
And every class, if I'm not mistaken, began with a prayer.
Yes, I think we've mentioned that before. That again is and still does, because I think my cousins. I asked my cousins, the Schultzes, and I think they said that's still happening. That you have to speak to the spooky imaginary man in the sky before you're allowed to learn anything.
What if you went to a school and every class began with just a little crack on the Ouija board, and you said, "This is just our thing." We're just summoning Satan every class.
Every class begins with chanting. Before you can learn about algebra, first we need a little Ouija board and a little bit of chanting.
What is your name? Okay, it's Jim. Are you sad?
I
Yes.
release the guys who we're going to release somebody before algebra. We're going to release.
Okay, that's been 10 minutes. We better just quickly teach you some reading, and then we'll get back to releasing Jim.
John, before we end this cast, have you got anything else on your Splag pad that you can cram in?
Yeah, how long have we been
into the allocated amount of trial minutes that we have on apps on Squadcast
on this new thing? How many trial minutes do we have? I'll try and
12.
Find something. 12. Okay. Yeah, I do have something that's a nice, I call it a 12-minuter. I'm going to save a little bit of a surprise for next week. And I don't know, maybe I'll give the audience a little bit of a teaser. It concerns a Super Bowl ad that caught my attention.
Okay, I watched the Super Bowl. So I hope I've seen this.
And I won't go into that this week because it's a little bit more of a deep dive into that ad. But one thing I thought I'd do as a kind of naked ploy to get people to watch the video version of the podcast is offer a tour around it's a bit like that podcast, A History of the World in 100 Objects. This is a history of my study in 100 objects. And I thought I'd just do a quick show and tell with a particular object that people might enjoy.
Yeah.
If you'll excuse me for a moment. Just one sec.
Sure.
Let's see if I can reach it.
Everybody that's not on the video version, John.
Yeah, maybe I'll describe it at least, but you won't obviously get the same experience as you would if you were watching. Now, everyone who is watching can see that.
Yes.
Basically it's a ceramic turkey, and it's about the size of a kind of planter box, because I think that's its intended purpose, although I'm not really sure. And as you can see, it's particularly hideous, and it has this kind of slimy giblets coming off its beak, and it's like a weird folk art. It's very elaborately made, and it's got this little pit in the middle, which I use to chuck the matches in when I light the incense in my study rather than having to go to the bin and put the match in every time. But Jacinta won't let me have it anywhere else in the house because it grosses her out. And I've tried to put it around the house, mostly just to annoy her. And she always just puts it back. And it's universally hated by everyone except me. My brother and I, years ago, my brother Tom, were on a bit of a road trip in New England, and we came across, this might have been in Vermont or Massachusetts, a yard sale in a small town. And I saw this turkey and thought, that's a great bit of American folk art. I know I want it for myself. Now, that in itself is a story worth telling, but I was made to think of the turkey recently because I was watching a special on Netflix called The Murders, which is about a South Carolina family, prominent legal family that got caught up in this murder saga. Some people might remember that. There was this weird incident where the guy claimed that somebody random had assailed him on the side of the road and shot him. It turned out he had tried to pay this guy to end his life, and he'd been embezzling money from his law firm. He's now been convicted of killing his two members of his family. So it was a fascinating tale, but there was a bit in it where after the trial, I think it was, they were doing like a auction of his estate because, he was just getting rid of all this stuff because I guess he was paying for legal fees or whatever. And his wife had died under suspicious circumstances, so they were getting rid of all their possessions, and they were zooming around the sort of auction house, and I saw a few seconds of this turkey, and I'll show it to you actually, if you bear with me for 1 sec. I've just got to put turkey into my search terms on WhatsApp. There we are, and I will forward this to you on WhatsApp. And maybe we can put this up on the socials.
Sure, yeah. Okay. Murders.
Yeah, it's a very similar, don't worry about the caption, just look at that image. It's a very similar looking turkey. You can see it's almost like it was created by the same artisan. So now I'm wondering, is this an art movement that I was not aware of? Ceramic turkeys, and I have this weird thing in common with this woman who was possibly murdered by her husband as part of his bizarre cover-up of his embezzlement activities. So that was a nice little twist. And now, I think that documentary's got to have elevated the value of my ceramic turkey. So if anyone wants to make me an offer, give me a shout. But that's just a little bit of show and tell from the office of John Maloney, Esquire. That was serial faster and floater and digital Sabbath taker.
John, thank you so much, not only for that bit, but for all the bits that you've offered in the show today. And I want to say thanks.
It sounds like you're about to fire me. We really appreciate your contribution over these years. We think it's reached a natural end.
And I want to also say thank you to everybody at Squadcast for allowing us to have a 1 hour long trial. I really liked this.
Very generous.
It went well. Squadcast could be a show sponsor. I believe that they've just partnered with Descript, which is a very popular online audio editing platform that actually is very good for editing video as well. So I feel like maybe if this recording doesn't screw up, then we are going to go with Squadcast. And I want to say to everybody, have a great rest of the week. I'm going to push a little bit of reverb up on my voice now because that's how we go. I'm going to extend the tail on my voice a little bit now because that's not annoying at all. And John, I'm coming to you as a voice of Gord. And I want to say, John, do you have anything you want to say before the end of the show this week?
I'd like to reiterate your thanks to the good people at Squadcast and to the people at Zencaster. I just want to say, hopefully, this means that you won't take people for granted because we used your product. We got a great offer from Squadcast and we took it because all's fair in love and commerce and we've got to look after ourselves. So, it's a competitive market. And I'm sorry because I made a few friends there over our time using that product and that's tough, but that's business.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Alexander Holland out. John Maloney out. This is Don't Praise the Machine, the podcast. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and you can see John Maloney's beautiful ceramic turkey. Go to YouTube and just put in Don't Praise the Machine, the podcast, and we're going to come straight up. Thank you so much, everybody, and we can't wait to see you next week.
The podcast.